Ohio State punked Indiana today. Indiana, there were a lot of people that were making an argument that they deserve to be in the playoffs, even though they could lose this game. If they were able to keep it close, then it shows that they're one of the best teams in college football. Well, today, Indiana was only able to compete with Ohio State for one quarter. Going into the second quarter, they were up 7-0. And, starting out the game, Indiana looked really good. It looked like, okay, like the Hoosiers, Curt Cignetti, he has these boys ready to come play, man. They forced a 3-and-out on Ohio State's first offense possession. Then when they get the ball, they drive down the field with ease. Curtis Work is looking like Tom Brady, looking efficient, deaking and dumping down the field. And then they get a big goal line stand to keep Ohio State from tying it up. And then you're feeling really good about Indiana's chances of being able to hang around in this game. Well, after the first quarter, Ohio State, they took off their belt. They bent Indiana over, and they just put belt to ass for the rest of this game. Indiana, they were getting blitzed to oblivion. Their offense seemed like they were doing nothing but going backwards. They finished this game with 68 passing yards and 83 rushing yards. That's a combined total of 51 yards of offense. Indiana, with how weak their schedule has been this year, with all the upsets that have happened this weekend, they still deserve to be in the playoffs, because losing to Ohio State is better than losing to Florida or losing to an unranked Auburn team or getting owned on the road by a bad Oklahoma squad. Indiana is a playoff team. Are they one of the best 12 teams in college football? I still don't know, because Ohio State and Oregon right now, they look like by far the only two elite teams in college football. And when they square off a few weeks in the Big Ten championship, that may be the game that shows us who's going to win it all, because Oregon and Ohio State from start to finish have been the most dominant teams in college football. Now, they have had their fair share of close losses, but, Ohio State, it seemed like they have yet to play their best football until they went into this game. And, Curt Cignetti, he was saying that Indiana was going to back down. They were going to be ready. And this afternoon, Ohio State, not only were they the more talented team, but they outcoached Indiana as well. Indiana, as good as they've been, Ohio State, by far, they didn't even belong on the same field as them. This was like watching a junior varsity versus varsity high school scrimmage. Indiana, they just looked like the more inferior team. They looked smaller up front. The receivers couldn't get open. Jeremiah Smith was bullying D'Angelo Pons. D'Angelo Pons is a really good cornerback. He was a freshman All-American last year, excuse me. So for him to just completely get toasted like how he did this afternoon was really surprising. And Indiana, they just obviously didn't have the athletes to compete with Ohio State. And going into the playoffs, I'm interested in seeing who they play in the first round, because I'm not saying that Indiana is going to be a one-and-done team. But what I am saying is that, depending on their matchup, is going to determine if they can advance in the playoffs or not. Because if they got to play Miami, I like Indiana's chances to win that game. But if they got to play Georgia or Texas, I don't really know. But if you get Indiana, Notre Dame, Indiana, Boise State, anybody other than Georgia, Texas, or Oregon, Ohio State, I like their chances. Hell, even if they play Penn State, I think they could get right with Penn State. But Ohio State, they just made a statement this afternoon with how they just completely just made garbage of Indiana. And it shows why your strength of schedule, although it doesn't define you as a team, it kind of does show if you're going to be battle tested for these kinds of matchups. Their average margin of wins was 23.5 points per game. And for the people that say you can only play the games that's on your schedule, yeah, that is true. But Ohio State, they've already been battle tested this year. Indiana wasn't ready for what they had coming to them in Columbus.